This is part 2 of the top 25 Frenchmans Magic episodes countdown. If you've not seen the first part, click the link below in the description to catch up. So without further ado, let's find out what the creme de la creme of this series was. Usually, seismic episodes, either an anniversary show, or 100th, or 250th, or even 500th if your show runs long enough, come with a lot of expectation, primarily in being able to celebrate the show itself and give something to the viewers that is a little higher in quality than what they're usually expecting. Unfortunately, due to Frenchmans Magic's patchy track record when it came to these, my confidence in them producing the goods was not that high. That's because the 100th episode, despite being a loving, fan service-laden tribute to the Brony fandom, which many people appreciated, was sadly overwhelmed by that, and didn't have the substance to back it up, as my score suffices. Don't get angry with me, this is just my opinion. Thankfully, the 200th managed to surpass all expectations. I mean, how the hell did it manage to take 7 individual plot threads suggested by the core voice actors and somehow make it work flawlessly? 1 year on, I still can't believe it. When Sparkle 7 came together, I was honestly gobsmacked. Taking a genius idea of giving us a taste of Twilight and Shining Armor's sibling rivalry out in the open for the first time as adults was a creative way of enlightening the viewer with character development and lore expansion that came out of literal nowhere, but also contained entertainment in droves, all the while it tied into the events of the season premiere to actually make it relevant and important. This wasn't a flippant throwaway, and more than made use of its platform. From Shining Armor being able to think out Twilight's plan before she'd even made it, right down to the individual threads the voice actors all wrote seamlessly, working together to make this have the scale to match its daunting title and episode number, providing laughs, tension and drama all in one nicely wrapped present, ending on a great moral as Luna and Spike utilise their status as quote-unquote forgotten siblings in their setups to ring home the importance of family togetherness, while all hell breaks loose in between, just to make the sandwich even more interesting to eat. The key elements of Twilight's plan were all cobbled together by the main 6 voice actors. Yes, all of the things we saw came from their skulls, and they were suggested around 2017, early 2018, when the showrunners knew that this cartoon was going to reach its series end not too long after, so they thought giving them something like the 200th episode to showcase these was a lovely little nod to them, which was lovely to witness. Tara Strong wanted Shining Armor and Twilight's rivalry, Tabitha St. Germain wanted Rarity planning a heist, Andrea Libman wanted Pinky in space, and honestly, who wouldn't, and Fluttershy as a spy. Ashley Ball wanted Applejack as a singer, and Rainbow again having to deal with Zephyr, which, honestly, I would have loved to have seen, whilst Kathy Westlock wanted the sibling dynamic between Spike and Twilight explored. All of these, honestly, could have been individual episodes on their own, and while I can see the positives and negatives of all of them, making me question why they didn't fill the holes in the episodes that Season 9 created, seeing them all sharing the spotlight and not obstructing one another is the type of harmony and cohesion that very few episodes in this show's run could match, and its reward was an episode that lived up to its title and numerical significance. It was inventive, robust, and packed to the brim with quality across the board that it was a surprise left such a mark on me when I watched it. The fact it beat long-time favourites to get into the top half of this list left me equally dumbfounded when I started piecing it together. This was a 200th episode that many, including myself, will not soon forget, all because it tried something completely different and ensured it couldn't fail. Nicely done, everyone. Frenchmans Magic has had a troubled history of making even a single plot in an episode be worth the time to invest in, let alone having the pressure of juggling 2 at once. Shows like The Simpsons, Avatar The Last Airbender, and even Rick and Morty, however, have made a habit of containing an A and B plot within their 22-minute runtimes to ensure that pacing, humour, character development, and storytelling always had an avenue to find relief and keep some of those more underwhelming episodes from suffering too much. As I've noted, MLP didn't always manage to do this with consistency, but considering they have never really had consistency to begin with, it's kind of absurd that they even think so. But whenever it offered up the chance to showcase it, it at least gave it a try. Thankfully, on one glorious occasion, they hit the damn jackpot, and it made for one of the most balanced and fun episodes of this show that I've seen. Yes, that's right, we're talking about All Bottled Up, because honestly, how the hell could I not? On one side, you have Trixie and Starlight with another one of their classic bickering argument narratives, with Trixie's famed unintentional teacup obsession storming to the forefront as Starlight gets pissed. And no, not like that. The other sees our main six tackling an escape room, which, for 2017, was oddly relevant and topical, which I normally don't expect to see from this show. And also it was something original, for sure. And they sing a song about how great their friendship is, something that Starlight alluded to sometime beforehand, which makes me chuckle, even more so when they fail the record thanks to the attendant noting they wasted their time singing it. Stupendous. This episode is a contrast between the crippling realization that even your bestest friends can annoy you, and honestly, even I could admit that's true, and have to work together to iron out details alongside the true bonds being tested by something remarkably simple, and using their qualities to push through it. Friendship tackled with a sense of wonder, amusement, and utility. This is lovely. This is one fun set piece after fun set piece from beginning to end, and never ceases to leave you without a smile on your face. It gave Starlight and Trixie the room to breathe and show they had the potential to tango and hold some moral weight up to summarily dutiful appraisal from me and siphon the best of our main cast into a room, displaying that they still have something in the tank to show, especially under the right circumstances. If you throw in a bunch of background characters too, putting in lovely appearances with them, as well as the occasional but nicely implemented visual elements, and what you have is a lovely experience that was a good way to get season 7 rolling. I can't say much more, it's just a good egg that was poached, boiled, fried, insert egg cookie method here, to nigh on perfection. But it just misses out on the top 10, which I'm a little disappointed about, but at least it got to a place where I at least expected it to rank. Season finales and controversy were never too far apart when it came to Frenchmans Magic. I mean, the amount of people who frothed at the mouth upon seeing Bookhorse get wings and a tiara on her head in a fashion that was deemed too fast for this show's narrative meant that they said they'd never watch the show again, which I find perplexing given hindsight and what it's given to us since then in the 7 years that have passed from it. Then again, one person's trash can be transformed into another's treasure, as the old saying goes. Amazingly, however, it was the show itself that produced one and the other at the same time, so good on ya. As one finale's negatives were turned into another's positives, to a point where even if you were vehemently against it, there's no way you couldn't be paying attention to it. A new villain, insurmountable odds, and a betrayal that foreshadowed something a lot bigger later down the line. Yes, I am going there linking the series end and this together. Also, whilst tying off loose ends created by an overarching narrative that looked to have completely been forgotten about. Twilight's Kingdom does everything in its power to make itself look and feel like a big deal, as Twilight's doubts turn into her biggest strength as she finally has her destiny uncovered as her royal purpose makes itself known to the world, with actual consequences to be had from the actions of Tyrek, a rarity in our villains of any level because, honestly, you destroy someone's home, you're going to get your ass handed to you, at least by a small amount. Its musical numbers are tender and bright, the slow-building tension can be cut with a knife, and the gradual revelations that result from it make its climactic battle all the more worthy of excitement. This was a finale built on surpassing your expectations, one leaf after another, one book turn after another, one holy crap course on a menu after another. I could keep going with these, and boy does it live up to that mantra. When looking at it from afar, Twilight's Kingdom is an episode that honestly has to be seen to be believed, especially in how it manages to give you a well-rounded showcase of all that this show has, in terms of character building, plot development, conflicts, musical numbers, and animated excesses. Sure, it's not perfect, as noted by the 2 marks missing from my score due to what I believe are subdued vocal performances and the fact that occasionally the score doesn't really appear when it needs to, but the fact it got so much right and wasn't shy from going to places the show hadn't been in terms of scale showed immense intent by the writers to make this a memorable way to pronounce that it was worth renewing for another season after it should have ended, doubling down on what resulted in a damn fine episode if I dare say so myself, as this finale created a daunting benchmark that the show, from then on, honestly had a hard time matching on a regular basis. Twilights Kingdom brazenly, smugly and confidently talks the talk and walks the walk, to the point where you just need to watch it once to understand why it's beloved by so many, and realise just how easy a job it had in cracking the top 10. Colour me impressed. Then again, I expected it to make this point, so maybe colour me relieved instead. When looking back at the history of Frenchmans Magic, you realise there are little points dotted around its timeline where the show had to prove a point. Whether it was the initial episode trying to convince people to watch it, or when Twilight turned into an alicorn and they needed to highlight that the show was worth pursuing with, after it could have ended on that note. The first one of these was the end of the Season 1 finale, when all enthusiasm was sapped out of me and many an audience member upon it disappointing greatly. I mean, if you enjoyed this episode, more the power to you, but just know you and I aren't going to be friends. The second season, as a result, then needed to start strong. One misstep, and all momentum that the first season had built could have been lost. Thankfully, they called up John Delancey, and, well, the rest is history. If there was ever an episode that wanted to shed the reputation and manifestation of Hasbro's marketing practices for this show's core demographic, then you're not going to find a better one than the return of Harmony. If you wanted to see our heroines look pretty in their dresses and squabble over simplistic and petty things, you were not going to find it here. Instead, you get a mythical animal pick and mix voiced by Q from Star Trek using magic to warp reality as they knew it and turn their heroes against each other. Why? Because he can! Yeah, Discord tore up the form book of the first season and gave this show a new arsehole, where an arsehole was never expected to be found, akin to when Bill Cipher rearranged Preston Northwest's face in Gravity Falls, which still creeps me out to this day. Ugh. Which I kind of expected Discord to do, but this is a TV Y-rated show, so they weren't going to do that. With such a revolutionary force of a character at the helm, a sense of danger and the heightening of this series' visual creativity dawned over an episode that started out of humble and uneventful beginnings into something much more enticing, showing that with confidence this show could literally do anything, and no musical number was required to disrupt it either, which, honestly, on this one occasion was actually a positive. And by warping the character's core moral compasses, it offered our main heroine a chance to see the trials and successes of the leadership that would come to define her in later seasons, against a foe worthy of fearing and subsequently defeating in a way that was well established and not pulled out of its arse, unlike similar finales and premieres later down the line, because Deus Ex Machinas be the death of us. Whilst the joy could easily be found in Discord's manic interpretation of the world, that was overshadowed by the scale of his threat and made the uphill battle against him worth seeing as the first major challenge for the main six presented itself. And honestly, nearly succeeded too, showing just how high the scale had been lifted compared to its Season 1 counterpart. I'm not dissing on Nightmare Moon, but she didn't really put up a fight, she mostly monologued the entire way. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. All in all, the return of Harmony was the forward-thinking, progressive step that this show needed to take in order to solidify its future, and boy was it a successful one. Anyone who was unconvinced by the first season had a reason to open their eyes at an episode that championed a character unlike anything the franchise had seen before, offered up action-fueled drama and visual delights that it had rarely repeated at that point, whilst making it feel more appropriate for the occasion. It made you sit up, take notice, and walk with your delirious adoration all the way to the bank. This, ladies and gentlemen, is how you kick off a season in style. And honestly, it rarely got better in terms of a premiere than this. The magical map that sits in Twilight's Castle of Friendship has often led us to episodes of, let's just say contrasting fortunes. Some, as noted by its initial premiere, showed how it could spice up the kind of adventure our cast takes, with differing levels of difficulty. Others told varying stories around how societies and people can benefit from tackling their intrinsic problems openly, by listening to one another and coming to some consensus to bring some good into the world. It also allowed some of our cast to go to places and deal with things you never would have expected to find them, like Starlight being called into Canterlot to resolve arguments between the two literal gods who not only run the country, but also the state of time itself. Yeah, that's the kind of swerve I can get behind. For the first time, we got a rare glimpse into how the royal princesses actually lead their daily routine, and the detrimental effect it has on their relationship with one another, which makes the problems in the past seem much more likely to have actually happened. But thankfully it measured more on the playful end of things until they butted heads and Starlight created an almighty headache that just made it even more enjoyable. All the while, a ballerina music box Twilight spied on and helped comfort her pupil, as the two sisters catastrophically fail, leading to a visceral and intense nightmare, as Daybreaker, Celestia's nightmare moon equivalent, summoned a majestic fight for supremacy as the two sisters repaired their bond. It's unusual, yet comes together by opening these two reclusive, misunderstood and ambivalent shells up for critique and comparison. It gives you an understanding in how such an event in the past ever could have occurred, by putting an equally divisive yet blunt fixture in between them to explore and bring things to the surface. This deep introspective is accented with humour to where it balances and cuts through the tension with no hesitation, allowing it to stand up and count all of its hatched chickens with relative ease, to where even limited locations can be forgotten about thanks to its fantastic use of dreamscapes and character expressions to fill in all the gaps. A royal problem as an episode stands as Starlight's greatest individual effort, as this lofty ensemble cast carries with it all the vigour required to make it work. It could have easily been forgettable if handled with about as much care as mouldy cheese, but thanks to utilising their characters at their best, it felt fresh when it aired and still does today. It's funny, emotive, and carries importance to the continued development of the two core royals who had for too long been sidelined, and a character who had been criticised for seemingly being shoved down our throats. And I definitely wasn't one who thought that, but still. On the contrary, it was a match made in heaven, and you could not have asked for better. After leaving Season 3's finale, Magical Mystery Cure, with a lot of questions, many hoped that Season 4 would at least address the idea that Twilight was now a freaking princess. It certainly ended up with that wrapped up nicely, but what good would a season-long overarching narrative be if its start wasn't up to par as well? The fact it did better than its opposing counterpart is a testament to how well the writers approached and dealt with it. The eponymously titled Princess Twilight Sparkle unravels in 3 stages: the fear at being thrust into a position that you're unprepared for and relied upon, searching through the past to discover the weight of her mentors' responsibilities as leaders, and saving the day through sticking to your own resolve and setting a new standard as a royal in the land. The eponymous episode, named after our capable hero trope, had a lot to handle mentally and emotionally, and boy did it carry the weight with resoluteness that set a brand new standard for big episodes of this show. It looked stunning thanks to an upgrade in the visuals, compared to the Season 3 ones at least, had a score to match some very dramatic moments, and had a Discord-injected batch of comedy to give us a well-rounded pie to devour and appreciate. All wrapped up in a great takedown of what's expected from a royal and forging her own path against standard protocol. This episode set up the future of the series and rewarded our patience with an intriguing and riveting adventure that took turns that, given premieres and finales of the past, I personally never expected. It was an episode that was heavy on lore, dense on cracking dialogue, and fit to bursting full of moral fidelity that bordered on insightful. This was a shot in the arm that helped propel this cartoon to heights that a year or so prior it could have only imagined. This was the launching pad that set the series up for 5 years of relative quality and prosperity, all because they had a slate wiped clean and the realisation and confidence to find the direction for it to take, setting up an overarching plot for a season and a character as a whole, whilst providing all the laughs, thrills and spills, all while keeping the mystery of the free-sprawling Everfree forest at the forefront of our mind. This was multifaceted, intelligent, and well constructed from beginning to end. No wonder Princess Twilight Sparkle still resonates even though it often gets overshadowed by its bookending brethren. This is the kind of narrative-driven standard that the show attempted to repeat, but often stumbled over the finer aspects of what made this one stand out as much. At the end of the day, it has earned my respect, and hopefully has given you a reason to reevaluate it, especially as it garners this lofty spot. Going into a 9th season of a long-running cartoon, it would be very easy for some of the writers to become complacent and deliver episode after episode with diminishing returns, as its stringent narrative and plot formula will gradually lose its ability to be potent. And while this was definitely the case because Season 9 had a lot of stinkers in its ranks, it also gave them the rare opportunity to use a well-established overarching narrative to its advantage, and give us an elaborate story with all of its intricacies on show for all to see. Frenemies was one of those parts, and it showed us that when a formula is shifted and trifled with, it can supply an immense amount of goodies that you just want to marvel over. For a change, instead of relying on the adventures of our main heroines, we get to see how the triplet of villainy, Cozy Glow, Chrysalis and Tyrek, sing, dance and scheme their way to figuring out how to do Grogar's bidding, all the while sidestepping him at the same time. It's all humorous fun, stitched together with underlying character studies in how they go about their business and how they, of all characters, realise that teamwork is actually important, before discounting it out of fear of reformation in a glorious red herring that it was such a brilliant swerve, oh man! All the while scaling a deadly mountain too, which was a thing. Nice. It opens us up to see these three in a way that the show rarely ever gave its villains the chance to. Usually they're the finished article, wreaking havoc, or at least showing a plan coming to fruition without our real knowledge of it at all. Rarely, if ever, have we seen them actually formulate that plan, understand their weaknesses, and then utilising their strengths to realise what needs to be done to make sure it works. This was the blueprint the Summer Sun setback later built on, and as a result, nearly got into the first half of this list. Seriously, the Summer Sun setback is great. This one, however, did it better, by somewhat of a decent margin, if I may add. And when you see how important this is to building their united power up for the final showdown later on in the season, it was an exercise that paid off in rich excess. The musical number, A Better Way to Be Bad, melded tango-influenced musings with cynicism, infighting, and a deft silliness to make it unique amongst its contemporaries and help an albeit strange episode sing its praises to all who care to listen. Frenemies is an episode that stands out because of its differences, as it takes three essential characters and makes them relatable despite being the scourge of the universe. It's a barrel of laughs and inquisitive writing that takes advantage of what it supplies and leaves you excited for more, whilst reveling in what it's already given you. It was an unexpected surprise and honestly was the kind of left field thinking that Season 9 needed a hell of a lot more of. At the end of the day, we got this regardless, and I have to be thankful for that. Seasonal holidays and celebrations have long been etched into Frenchmans Magic's canon, although the decision to have a release schedule that undermined the placement of them is still a decision that I believe is maddening. Most of the episodes that give them a platform, however, are in my opinion quite underwhelming. The over-reliance on hearth-swarming, for example, as a plot device became quite tired, despite the fact that the 2018 Best Kept Ever Christmas special has become a nice seasonal watch for yours truly. You can only see it being used multiple times before asking yourself, haven't we seen this before? Although, this can be forgiven once you realise that there are multiple perspectives on the holiday festivities that can be shown, which makes it no wonder that hearth-swarming was always given a chance to shine whenever the opportunity arose to do so, but it never really supplied me with too much to harp over whenever it did. Thankfully, however, there was one exception that upon finishing it left me with my jaw wide open and amazed at what it had produced. The idea of a heartwarming tale retelling a Christmas carol with magical talking ponies and having them sing their way through it could have potentially been a disaster, given the cheesiness that might entail. Instead, the story of Twilight reading a book about the greatness of the holiday to a dismissive Starlight, putting our well-known characters into its roles, provided the sheer amount of holiday cheer that would even make a Christmas naysayer like me change their tune. Hell, the moment that heartwarming is here once again rings out, I turn into a ball of Christmas-loving mass. It took this show 2 minutes to get me hyped as fuck for Christmas, so you know it did something right. And while some parts were cut due to time constraints, including Discord's cameo as Jacob Marley, which would have been absolutely beautiful, they managed to streamline the process somewhat, throwing song after song after song at you with summary interludes into normality to break it up and make their impression feel less overwhelming and daunting. However, that did create some pacing issues, resulting from that in its final act, as well as Luna's future being a bit of a downer, putting a damper on the parade somewhat. In the most controversial opinion I have of any of Dan Ingram's song inclusions, this episode still is scintillating and enthralling, as it makes a tired trope of Christmas media feel alive again, with fantastic set pieces, character costume designs that make me weep with joy, and the sight of Twilight ending Pinky's present out loud in one of the rare instances at that time of the realization that yes, these ponies actually sing the song's musical numbers out loud for everyone to hear, adding the smallest whiff of comedy to a demure, respectable and heartwarming spectacle. And when I say my jaw dropped upon seeing this for the first time, I wasn't lying. This gave me a glimpse at the absolute creativity, scale and emotion that MLP could pack into its arsenal, and I wanted more of it. If you can provide me with Applejack's best overall vocal singing performance and the most stacked collection of quality bops this show has ever done in one package, alongside a story that feels fresh despite its notable age, with all the visual panache to match, you know it's going to be worth the price of admission just to experience it once, let alone in repeated viewings every Christmas like I do. This episode, A Heartwarming Tale, is one that further entrenched Season 6 as my favourite in this show's run. It was the best of a brilliant bunch, and there was no way this wasn't going to make the list whether you tried to kill me over it or not, and I am happy that it reached a position in the top 5 that I can be proud of. In my many years of watching this show, one question always rang out from the fandom. When will Applejack, Big Mac and Apple Bloom's parents be covered? It took them many years, but the Season 7 halfway point led us to a hiatus with a new emotional standard set for this show as a whole. One that wasn't surpassed without a fight. When this cartoon started in 2010, and when I first had a glimpse of it, I would have never expected an episode like The Perfect Pair to even exist. An episode that was purely focused on maturity, drama, and all the emotions flowing. No comedy except when it was entirely necessary for plot purposes, no annoyances, no bullshit. Flashback episodes in the past, as noted by the Cutie Mark Chronicles, and to a lesser extent Where the Apple Lies, showed that it could be done well and poorly. This was on another level though, as it supplied the goods that made many shed liquid pride with mass volume. Good God, that musical number! Oh, it's absolutely, utterly magnificent. Applejack, Apple Bloom and Big Mac find out they're actually part pair, and have an eye-opening and heartfelt talk with some of Ponyville's long-standing townsfolk to find out about their parents, as Granny Smith had withheld the information, and after discovering why, no wonder she did, because oh boy, there is some baggage lodged in those brain cells. And after experiencing it all through visual and audio retellings and highlighting just how it affected everyone who was touched by it, God, it shows just how much substance this had, and it made it all the more worth it to see. It was as tender as filet mignon and just as good to savour as well. Although this pony Romeo and Juliet may have been missing the deaths of relatives and our central protagonists to cap off the retelling, it had almost everything else nailed down. Two warring, fruit-bearing families, two love-struck ponies, and a tragic choice between those you dedicate anything to, bloodline or otherwise. The voices of Felicia Day and, against all logic and odds, Will freaking Shatner added gravitas and weight to Pear Butter and Grandpere to further embolden the importance of the entire 22 minutes that we witnessed, with the old man's reintegration into the extended family's life under that pear-apple hybrid, bringing more tears to the eye than I'd already shed by this point. It's a roller coaster, and damn, it was a watershed moment for this show that, honestly, was rarely rivaled at all. You name me an episode that made so many people feel so many things, and I bet you there's only one thing that could even come close. And while it was limited on extravagance visually and audibly, on a rare occasion such as this, it worked to its advantage, missing only a couple of interesting transitions and a few minor editing techniques to jump the threshold into perfection where honestly, it deserved to be. I won't complain though, as The Perfect Pair is a poignant, heartwarming, and sophisticated venture that totally paid off in pretty much every way it could. And while we never did find out the reason for Pear Butter and Bright Mac's demise, we will always have the tale of their courtship and the effect it had on who it left behind, not just in the show, but for the fans watching it too. And that's more than enough, as far as I'm concerned. This show, like many others, have episodes that come and go, and you don't really remember them, or if you do, it's usually for the wrong reasons. There are episodes, however, on the opposite end of that spectrum, ones that are heralded as masterpieces from the moment they finish airing. They are that well regarded by the fandom in question, which can happen, but it's very, very rare. One of those was the last episode I talked about, including this one with it, because it is a very rare occasion that an episode comes along and hits you in the face with such power, you have to recoil and say, damn, this one has changed the face of the show forever. Villain reformation in this show is usually tied to important moments of substantial character development, with Twilight usually at the helm for the majority of them, because they were usually saved for premieres or finales to where it became somewhat of a trope that this series waved proudly. So colour me surprised when the most hated supporting character of this show's entire run was given a musical compendium alongside her most bitter Gridiron rivals to create something truly special. Crusades of the Lost Mark was a sing-along masterpiece, threading a narrative surrounding the democratic system at work, the dissolution of friendship thanks to one's domineering attitude, and the realization of just how damaging your parents can be by putting undue weight on a child's shoulders when it really shouldn't be done at all. The songs make you want to jump to action and cry in equal measure as we see Diamond Tiara at her absolute worst and her defiant best, whilst the CMCs got their cutie marks by following on from an earlier episode in the season and making their mark by helping others no matter how much negativity that they had been besieged to in the past, as forgiveness under the right circumstances is workable for all concerned. I get goosebumps watching this one every damn time, and honestly, it's easy to see why. It managed to condense a story that could have been stretched out to excessive levels, streamlining it to where it never tripped over itself, had song reprises that were actually damn important for a change, and had seismic character development that forever changed the game. Crusades of the Lost Mark was an undoubted triumph, and another coming-of-age success befitting an end to the CMC's overarching narrative from their first overall appearance in The Call of the Cutie back in Season 1. And while it wasn't given the best placing within Season 5, being awkwardly sandwiched between two subpar episodes towards the latter end of its run, it therefore seemingly was unimportant on paper, but more than made up for it by supplying surprises all round, a consistent tension and dramatic edge, fueled by insanely well implemented morals, progressive character writing, and a story that led you through ups and downs that rarely could have been rivaled. But much like The Perfect Pair, this was denied its final point for perfection due to animation aspects not really reaching its zenith. But outside of that, hit home runs and just couldn't stop. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a bronze medal episode worth watching again and again, as it will never cease to make me proud of these three and what they achieved. As well as making me ask the question, how the hell did those writers make me care for a character that I hated for so many goddamn years? You lot are mad, I tell ya! The final two on this list were the only ones that got perfect scores from me. 25 out of 25 A+. They scored so well because they represented the best of this show in two completely different guises. In the first case, if I ever wanted to give someone all the strengths of Frenchmans Magic wrapped up in one fun-filled, songtastic package, then this would be it. Also, when you manage to snag the musical parodying legend that is Weird Al Yankovic onto your pony cartoon at a time when many wouldn't touch this with a barge pole, attention would be grabbed no matter what else it had done. Pinkie Pride starts and ends as an all-singing, all-dancing nod to the uniqueness of Ponka, and the emotional sledgehammer of her being knocked off her perch as the head honcho of partying by someone who is a little bit loose in the skull too. While simple in its story foundations, the depth of which, alongside the stellar character writing, visual plentitudes, a moral about always reminding yourself of your unique talents in a crisis of self-confidence when compared to others in the same field as you, and the noted songs and score, created a perfect package that rarely lets you lose grip of it and keeps on satisfying rails for its duration, as Pinkie and Cheese Sandwich tried to turn Ponyville into party capital of Equestria for a day. It balances comedy and emotional turmoil, reflective moments of personal clarity with absurd and hilarious laughs, bouncy musical jams with mournful laments. It supplies everything that you or I could possibly want from this show, and for the longest time, it was never outshined. And to have Weird Al Yankovic basically play a pony version of himself, at sometimes completely straight-faced in character until the need to let eccentricities fly, played out the perfect antagonistic role without actually being bad. He did his job as an antagonist, despite not having a bad bone in his damn body as he fit to type, despite rebelling against it, and made us realise there was no ill feelings as he held his own against our bubbly party pone, setting us up for a fun-filled ride and endearing himself to where he cemented his place as a favourite for many, to where a well-rounded and thematically buoyant return 5 seasons later was well worth the wait. Not to mention, the supporting main 6, while present, gave these two the room and breathing space to let it all happen without incident. That was superb. And at the end of the day, if I ever want a reminder of how much I love this show, I will put this on and just smile in pure joy. Pinkie Pride is an episode that I never held any animosity towards from the moment I witnessed it, and every subsequent watch, the same is true. I never lift a finger at it, I never get bored of it, I never get pissed off at it. The episode is an absolute pleasure to sit through every damn time. And well, the fact it only got the runner-up spot, considering how long it held the number 1 place, is shocking, honestly. But regardless, it managed to sit on the stairs of greatness from the moment it first passed my eyes and ears. No episode can say that, except for one. So here we are, ladies and gentlemen, sitting front row centre as the gold medal is awarded to what is, in my opinion, the best Frenchmans Magic episode of all time. Now, this may seem weird, but much like the worst episodes list, the number 1 spot was occupied, taking the place from an episode that I believed was destined to get there. For close to 4 years, I thought that Pinkie Pride would never be topped, and that is something that I stick by. But unlike the worst episode list, I am very happy that an episode of such quality, despite matching it in score and grade, has managed to sit above it, because on this occasion, it thoroughly deserved it. If the prior entry was the best of this show in a standard format, then what is the absolute best of the best? Well, it's this show with all of its bells and whistles ringing, showing just how epic and fundamentally thrilling it can be. Even with expectations supplied, it managed to blow them out of the water, through the atmosphere, into another fucking dimension. There is no better fitting representation of how great this show is than the episode that was its last roll of the dice and the conclusion to all of it. The ending of the end was a spectacle unlike any other, combining multiple seasons worth of character development, lore, world building and progression, including the culmination of a season-wide overarching narrative that actually set itself up wonderfully into a wild, sumptuous and exhilarating ride that rewarded long-time viewers with the Avengers-esque representation of unity, solidarity and togetherness against a common evil that we never knew we needed or believed this show could actually produce, providing twists and turns of intensity, moments of real emotional weight, and action-packed battles that brought the true scale of this to life with consummate ease, and they summarily ran with it without breaking a sweat. It intelligently left the sentimentality to its epilogue, the true series finale, The Last Problem, allowing it all the space in the world to be able to crack all of its eggs into the pan and create the balanced and very filling omelette that made up for Season 9's many misgivings by championing its finest episodes' prior work, in making all of this come together with the excitement and enthralling feeling that it deserved. The culmination of Twilight's ascension to ruler of Equestria, beginning with Discord's shock revelation as Grogar, the battle at Canterlot Castle, the return of Disharmony and the Wendigos, the final battle on the open fields, and ending with the donut-eating relaxation that mirrored its Season 1 counterpart, this episode had everything, supplied all the relevant goods, and didn't need a musical number to fuel the seriousness that this had from the first moment it began, to compound its greatness ever more so. It pulled no punches, and fought for its balanced, full to the brim and concise story to tell itself without flinching. It's absolutely phenomenal, and rightfully stands proud as the pinnacle of this show's achievements. It was a worthy reward sitting through 9 seasons of inconsistent material to get to this point. It may not have been the last episode in technical terms, but this one landed a critical hit that vanquished all around it through remarkable intelligence, expertise, and enough gallant delivery to make sure that it was extremely difficult to forget. The ending of the end. What a thrill ride from start to finish, and a no-brainer for the greatest episode of this show, without doubt. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The ending of the end walks away with a golden statuette going into the sunset with its head held high. Now you may be thinking to yourself, was there really much of a difference between the 2 episodes that were vying for that number 1 spot? Well, here's the thing for context. Pinkie Pride is the athlete that works hard to ensure they make it to the Olympics and has a shot at going for the gold medal. The ending of the end is the prime athlete injected with steroids that then runs that 100 meters in less than 5 seconds. The ending of the end was just another beast on a different level to everything else that surrounded it, and that was because we'd invested 9 seasons and 9 years worth of our time in this show, or in some cases much shorter periods if you jumped on later like I did. So I probably should have said it more quickly to how I experienced it, but you get what I mean. Effectively, this was the culmination of everything, and it made it look like it was worth something, much more than everything else. So you can kind of understand why it had that spot pretty much carved out from the moment it was aired, from the moment I saw it in an amphitheatre at Nottingham Trent University for UK PonyCon last year, because I sat there in awe of it, close to trying to stop myself from jumping around. That's how good the episode was when I watched it casually. When I critiqued the crap out of it, there was nothing. Literally nothing bad I could really say about it. And that is something I couldn't even say to the perfect episode that it supplanted. Pinkie Pride had maybe one or two minor little niggles, but they were nothing to take away from the score. This one just... it rolled out the red carpet and strutted along it like it was a model with so much experience that it really didn't give a damn what was going on around it. It was so good. And if you think that this episode isn't the best of all time for this show, then I'd love to hear your opinions in the comment section, because it would be an amazing opinion to hear. And hopefully it encourages some discourse along with the rest that I've included. So leave your comments down there if you would be so kind to. I would appreciate it. And of course, don't forget to leave a like button and share the video around too while you're at it, because some of the people you know might like this as well. But on the broader picture of things, I feel a bit bittersweet coming to the end of this big video, because the MLP 10 celebrations I'd planned to last only 1 month ended up lasting 3, which was because these videos were monsters, and hopefully the effort put into them at least highlights why they took so long, and hopefully you've enjoyed them all as I put them out, because MLP Gen 4 has been a very good sparring partner for me, not just on an entertainment level as a cartoon, but it also gave me a lot to critique about and prove whether I could pick a show apart and highlight my opinions on it the way I have done. It's also given me employment opportunities, it's given me friends who I am immensely grateful for, and it's given me experiences that I'm never going to forget. It's something that has left its mark on me and many others, and no matter what Gen 5 is, or what it will become, this show and this generation of My Little Pony, for its groundbreaking abilities, will remain as a stalwart example of the quality that a small cartoon that could will eventually become, and the episode that garnered the #1 spot is a damn fine example of that. I am now going to be bidding Gen 4 adieu as I wait patiently for its next generation to rear its head, and I look forward to sparring with it once it arrives, for sure. I have been Freddie Thomas, you've been People Watching, this is the CC Network, and I will see you all in 2021.